What's up YouTube? In this video, I want to do a quick tutorial on how I plan on customizing these shoes right here and turning these into a pair of crimson toe ones. So this is what it looks like fresh off the shelf. This is the Jordan 1 Low in the black and Arctic orange colorway, and it came out about a month or two ago. And you know, I really like the Arctic orange colorway on these, but the black is just a little too overpowering for me. If you've been following me on my channel, you know I like my brighter kicks. So I want to turn these into a little bit of a brighter colorway. So the plan is actually very simple. What I plan on doing is painting this mid panel here from black to white, and I'm going to turn the swoosh here from the Arctic orange to black. And so the project sounds very simple and straightforward, but it should take some time. A lot of time is spent with the preparation process, but let's go ahead and get started. So here are the materials that I'll be using to complete this process. Here I have some painter's tape. This is some leather prepare and deglazer by Unlace brand. I have some cotton balls or cotton swabs. I have a bottle of white acrylic leather paint, a bottle of black leather acrylic paint, some matte acrylic finisher. Of course you need some paint brushes because we'll be painting. And then I have this plastic palette here where I'll be storing my paint. I'll leave the links to all of these materials in the description below. So real quick before you start anything, I recommend you take off your laces and unlace the shoes, and that way the laces don't get in the way with your project. Step 1, I'm going to be using painter's tape to tape off the shoe and block off all the surrounding areas, only leaving the part I want painted exposed. This step is technically optional, but I highly recommend you do this, especially if you're new to painting your shoes. This part can be a little time consuming, but it really is worth it if you want a perfect finish and if you also want to save yourself from a lot of headache from messing up by accident. After you finish taping off your shoe, it should look something like this. So this is what the shoe looks like after I taped it up. I did go a little overkill here, but the idea is that you tape off everything around where you don't want paint. Really, I didn't have to do all this, but I did because I am pretty clumsy and sometimes paint splashes around. And again, just to be extra cautious, I just covered it up real quick. But the idea again is that you expose what we're about to work on, which is black here and white here. Another thing I could have done, I guess, is I could have just used this X-Acto knife to cut along the edge right here instead of tearing each piece separately. The problem with that, at least for me, is that one, I'm kind of scared to puncture my shoe or like push too hard to the point where I might cause an indentation on the leather. So I just decided to use my fingernail and dig along the edges like this. I guess the X-Acto knife technique could have been more efficient, but you just gotta work with what you got. So now that the shoe is taped off, the next step is to prime these panels with this leather deglazer. I'm pretty sure you can also use nail polish remover or acetone and it'll do the same thing. But the purpose of this step is to prime these panels. So basically we're removing this factory finish, removing this old paint or the layer of paint and dust and things like that, so that when we're ready to paint on it, the paint will stick better. Make sure as you're applying this deglazer substance, I would highly recommend you wear gloves. This stuff is really strong and actually may potentially hurt your skin, especially if your skin is sensitive. Either way, wear gloves to be safe. Quick note, if you do use a cotton swab or even a paper towel, you may see some residual lint or cotton fibers along. Don't worry. If anything, you can just use a piece of Scotch tape and use it to lint roll it or stick it off, but it really shouldn't be a problem. So now that the shoe is taped off, it's time to apply the paint. The first one I'm going to apply is a white one, and I'm going to again use the white to paint the black panels here. So we just applied the first coat of white paint on here, and it's going to look pretty bad to be honest, but don't worry, it's normal to look like that. You're actually going to have to apply several layers of white. I think I'm going to probably put about at least five layers of white on here. So again, after applying the first layer of white, I'm gonna let it dry. Probably gonna wait a good half hour to an hour at least. Some people expedite the process by using like a blow dryer or something, but I'm just gonna let it dry for about half an hour to an hour, and then I'll keep going. Again, normal, you're gonna put several layers of white until you pretty much get the shade of white that you like. One more thing to mention to not worry too much about, you might get some white paint on the swoosh, which again is fine because it is white, and when we paint the swoosh black later, it's gonna totally cover it up. So don't worry too much about that yet. All right, so after finishing this step, the shoe is gonna look something like this. This is actually 10 layers or 10 coats of white paint. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I would wait a solid 30 minutes to an hour between each coat to let the paint dry, and I added a total of 10 coats on here. A couple of notes at this point. Again, it's not going to be perfect. You will probably have some imperfections that you can clean up later. And another thing I wanted to mention is paintbrush care. In order to clean my paintbrush and maintain the integrity of the fibers, I use this brush cleaner right here, and I'll link the description down below as well. But maintaining your brush is going to be very important, not only for the longevity of the brush, but also to maintain the quality of the strokes as you use your brush. As we move on, the next step now is to apply the black paint onto the swoosh. Alright, so at this point, this is what the shoe is going to look like. All I did here was apply 2 layers of black paint onto the swoosh, and the vision is definitely coming along, but we still have some ways to go. At this point, you'll notice if you look up close that there are quite some imperfections, and of course, if your stroke is not perfect, you'll probably have messed up a little bit, but that's okay. So at this point, we're gonna finally remove the tape, and we're gonna use our small brush to fix our imperfections and really use our precision as best as we can to fix our mistakes and fill in all the gaps. One of the most important parts about this step is using a really good quality small paintbrush. This is gonna allow to really get into those small crevices, and especially with the swoosh, because it is 3-dimensional and it kind of sticks out a little bit from the panel, you want to really make sure you're careful and you're able to get that depth as well. So after you finish touching up the swoosh with all the black paint, now we're going to move on to the white paint. You might need 2 or 3 coats of white again to fill in all the black spots that you might have missed or that was covered from the tape earlier. Alright, so at this point, all the paint has been officially applied onto the shoe. Now the next step is to apply this matte acrylic finisher onto the shoe. So I'm going to apply 1 or 2 coats of this, and this is going to help protect the paint from cracking and chipping, and it also adds a little more flexibility to the leather and the paint, so that when you are wearing the shoe and when you're pretty much bending the leather in and out, it's not going to chip the paint or wear the paint down as quickly, if at all. Angelus brand does have the option to have different finishes. Again, I'm using the matte finish, but there are options to do like a glossy or a super glossy or whatever. In this case, I like the matte finish. It's a little more subtle. I think the glossy finish would look better for something like patent leather, but in this case, this is more of a dull leather or a dull colorway, so I'm going with the matte finish instead. So the directions here do say to only apply 1 or 2 light coats and allow to dry for about 24 hours. As you apply this stuff onto the shoe, you'll notice a little bit of bubbly residue on the paint. Don't worry about that. It should eventually absorb into the paint and go away. So it is going to look a little foamy and bubbly at first. Don't worry about that. So we put 2 coats of the acrylic finisher. We let it dry for several hours. So now let's lace them up and put them on feet. So just a quick disclaimer, I am by no means a professional, so this is not professional advice. This is just the way that I've learned how to do things, and apparently it's worked for me. I highly recommend that if you are new to this kind of project, or if you're new to customizing shoes, you should definitely practice on an old pair of beaten shoes that you don't care about first. That way you get the technique and the sequencing down and things before you just go on and go for it on a more expensive pair of shoes. But hopefully this video did help you out. Let me know in the comments below if you think this color blocking looks better, or did you think I ruined the shoe? I would also love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions and feedback. I'm looking to always improve my tutorial type of videos. So if you have any feedback or if you have any questions about the process, leave me a comment below and I'll help you the best I can. While you're at it, be sure to check out my other videos here and here. Otherwise, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.